Number 10. Three Studies of Lucian Freud, $145 million. This 1969 oil on canvas by the Irish-born British painter Francis Bacon depicts artist Lucian Freud. All three panels, in Bacon's typical abstract, distorted, isolated style, show Freud sitting on a cane-bottom wooden chair within a cage, on a curved mottled brown surface with a solid orange background. This triptych was painted in 1969 at the Royal College of Art in London, where Bacon had a large enough studio to work on three adjacent canvases simultaneously. On November 12, 2013, the triptych sold for $145 million to an unnamed buyer at Christie's New York auction house. The 2013 sale also represents the highest price paid for a work by a British or Irish artist. Number 9. Portrait of Dr. Guichet. This is one of the most revered paintings by the Dutch artist Vincent van Gogh. It depicts Dr. Paul Guichet, who took care of Van Gogh during the final months of his life. There are two authenticated versions of the portrait, both painted in June 1890. Both show Guichet sitting at a table and leaning his head on his right arm, but they are easily differentiated in color and style. In 1990, the first version fetched a record inflated adjusted price of $152 million when sold at auction in New York, making it then the world's most expensive painting. The portrait was bought by a Tokyo art dealer on behalf of Japanese industrialist Roi Saito. He briefly caused a scandal when he said he would have the Van Gogh painting cremated with him after his death, though his aides later said Saito's threatening to burn the masterpiece was just an expression of intense affection for it. Number 8. Portrait of Adele Bloch-Bauer I, $158.4 million. Portrait of Adele Bloch-Bauer I is a 1907 painting by Gustav Klimt. It has been referred to as the final and most fully representative work of his golden phase. Adele Bloch-Bauer was a refined, art-loving Viennese salon lady, a patron and close friend of Gustav Klimt. Klimt took 3 years to complete the painting. Ronald Lauder, the cosmetics magnate, bought the gold-flecked portrait in 2006 for the Neue Gallery. At the time, it was a record paid for a painting. Its extraordinary story, seized by the Nazis during the Second World War and reclaimed by the rightful owner's niece only when she was in her 80s, is told in a recent film, Woman in Gold, starring Helen Mirren. Number 7. Le Rêve, $158.5 million. This 1932 oil painting by Pablo Picasso, then 50 years old, portraying his 22-year-old mistress. It belongs to Picasso's period of distorted depictions with its oversimplified outlines and contrasted colors. It was first purchased for $7,000 in 1941 by Victor and Sally Gans of New York City. After the Ganses died in 1997, their collection was sold at Christie's auction house as a means of settling their inheritance tax bill. The entire collection set a record for the sale of a private collection, bringing $206.5 million. The total amount paid by the Ganses over their lifetime of collecting these pieces was only $2 million. In 2001, under financial pressure, the buyer who purchased Le Rêve at Christie's in 1997 sold it to casino magnate Steve Wynn, who later in 2013 sold it to Stephen Cohen for $158.5 million. Number 6. Woman 3, $162.4 million. Woman 3 is a painting by abstract expressionist painter Willem de Kooning. Woman 3 is one of a series of 6 paintings by de Kooning done between 1951 and 1953, in which the central theme was a woman. The painting used to be a featured piece at the Tehran Museum of Contemporary Art. The Islamic Revolution of 1979, however, led to the banning of the artwork that featured a rough model of a woman. It was then traded in 1994 to David Geffen, who then sold the piece to Stephen Cohen in 2006 for $162.4 million. Number 5, 1948, $165.4 million. This painting by Jackson Pollock, an American painter known for his contributions to the abstract expressionist movement, was sold for about $165.4 million in 2006, a sale shrouded in secrecy and brokered by Sotheby's in 2006. According to a report in the New York Times, the painting was sold by David Geffen, the DreamWorks co-founder, to David Martinez. But Martinez's law firm later issued a statement saying he did not own it, so the real buyer stays unknown. David Cook, deputy director of paintings at Sotheby's Australia, stated that the price of Pollock's paintings will continually rise in value, as very few of Pollock's paintings are still left. Cook has also stated that another of Pollock's paintings, Blue Poles, is worth at least 180 million Australian dollars and possibly even more than number 5, 1948. Number 4. Woman of Algiers, $179.3 million. Woman of Algiers is a series of 15 paintings and numerous drawings by the Spanish Cubist artist Pablo Picasso, probably one of the greatest and most influential artists of the 20th century. Version O, the final painting in the series, was painted in 1955, and it marks the culmination of the series and has long been considered the most important Picasso in private hands. The painting was auctioned at Christie's, New York for a second time in May 2015 and was expected to set a world record price for a work of art at auction. The painting was sold for $179.3 million, a record price for a painting at auction. Number 3. Number 6. Violet, Green, and Red, $186 million. Dmitry Rybolovlev, a Russian billionaire, paid $186 million for Mark Rothko's abstract painting. Rothko was an American painter of Russian Jewish descent. Although Rothko himself refused to adhere to any art movement, he is generally identified as an abstract expressionist. That amount is the highest ever paid for a work by an American painter. However, it is now subject to a legal dispute with Mr. Rybolovlev, accusing an art dealer of misleading him about the price. It is maybe easier to understand this 1951 abstract painting than the fact that it is worth almost $200 million. Number 2. The Card Players, $274 million. The painting, depicting a pair of farmhands engaged in a game of cards, is one of the 5 works in a series by famed French post-impressionist Paul Cézanne. The versions vary in size and in the number of players depicted. Each scene is depicted as one of quiet, still concentration. The subjects, all men, look down on their cards rather than at each other, with the cards being perhaps their sole means of communication outside of work. One version of the Card Players was sold in 2011 to the royal family of Qatar for about $274 million, making it the second most expensive work of art ever sold. Number 1. When Will You Marry? $300 million. A work by French painter Paul Gauguin, who died penniless in 1903 and was not well appreciated until after his death, has smashed the record books as the most expensive ever sold. When Will You Marry is an oil painting produced in 1892 during Gauguin's first visit to French Polynesia. It features a pair of Tahitian girls seated next to a tree. It was sold privately by a Swiss collector to an unknown buyer for close to $300 million, the highest price ever paid for a work of art. It is believed that Qatar Museums is the purchaser. The new owners will take possession of the new canvases in January 2016.